How are you doing there? We are at a really, really important, maybe the most important part of the weekend, which is the Dalkey Literary Awards, something we set up 2 years ago, which has the biggest bursary, it's the biggest prize fund in Irish literature, which has been made available to Irish writers. And we couldn't have done this without my guest here, who is Neil Freshwater, the Chief Executive of Zurich Insurance, because Zurich pay the bill. We come up with the writers, but they write the check. And as you know, the person who writes the check. Neil, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, thanks, David.
Listen, thank you so much. I'm really serious. Now, lots and lots of companies say, oh, we're into the arts and we'll do this, but very few companies say, you know, here's a pound, here's the check. We're putting our money where our mouth is. So thank you so much. Why, I'm not going to ask you why you do it live on air, but give me the thinking behind it.
So, I mean, Zurich are very proud to have had such a long-standing involvement with you and the festival for the last, I think it's 8 years, David.
The guts of the last decade.
And since you and I sat down and had breakfast a couple of years ago and thought up the Literary Awards, I mean, the arts is the very essence of Ireland, and we love our involvement in that. And over the last, 15, 16 months, it's kind of been tough for everyone, but it's been tough for the arts. And, you know, we think more now than ever, being able to provide some form of support to the arts and to these fabulous authors that you'll be talking about, that's something that we're very proud as Zurich to be involved in.
No, it's been wonderful. And again, I suppose this year, more than any, you know, the last, let's say, 2 odd years of the pandemic, people have been alone, they've been out of sorts, lots of people have suffered all sorts of weird traumas, some significant, some not, but lots of people are taking solace, you know, in the written word, in the book, in fiction, in adventures, in literature. I mean, you know, is that part of your thinking as well?
I think it's very much. I mean, I can only really talk to how it's been for me and for my family. I've loved being able to assemble a little library of the shortlist. It's the 2nd year I've done that. I've had all of my kids at home with me because they've been pulled out of university, and we've been working through the books. And my daughter leaves me little Post-it notes in the books for what she likes. And for us, it's been something that we've shared. It's something that we can go away and hide and escape to. And if it gives other people that sort of ability to escape and to appreciate the beauty and the variety and the diversity of the literature that's on display, then that's something very special. And again, you know, for us to be able to play a small part in supporting that,
I love this idea.
Privilege.
I love this idea of we're kind of propagating Irish culture into it. Where you live in New York, because you've been, I mean, you've had the weirdest lockdown, haven't you? You came over to take up the job.
So I should be in the middle of Dublin, in my little apartment there, and I've gone back with my family and all my kids. We've come back into one place that we didn't think would ever happen again. You know,
how is that, by the way? You know, I know you're kind of on camera, but
it's great to be in Dalkey. I'm loving it being back here.
This is a bit of escapism.
But, you know, we've all had to adapt to very different circumstances, and it's given us an opportunity to do things and almost be forced to do things that perhaps we haven't done, or we've stopped, or we've forgotten, and getting back into books or into things like sort of speaking and engaging with your family without technology.
Yeah.
And having something to talk about. I think that's been
Our family
fantastic.
don't communicate face-to-face anymore. We just text each other at home.
No, we still use the phone to get people down to dinner in the evenings and that, but so the idea of bringing people together, of community, and you know, finding the best in people again, I think it's been very special. And you know, the last 15 months, we're all looking for things that we can pick out that are just that little spark of light, that things that we can look forward to, because you know, there's plenty of bad news stuff out there. There's plenty of difficult stories. People have had incredible hardship over that period, and anything like this that can give people that little beacon, little lift, I think that's fabulous. And whether that's in books or music or the art, or I think that's just been more important than ever. I mean,
for us, this has been amazing, because the funny thing about festivals is you want to. On the one hand, you want to bring people together, you want to have and we'll be back in the big tents next year, right? You want to talk to people, but also what you want to be in a position is to be able to support artists, because it's difficult to appreciate how fragile it is as an artist, as a writer, and how difficult the whole process is, and how much of your life goes into it. And then something, maybe a book doesn't land, it doesn't sell, it doesn't do as well. And it's so easy for writers to give up. And once they give up, they don't go back. Whereas a company like yourself saying, you know what, we're going to support you. And we're going to financially, because everyone can get a pat on the back or a good review, that's great, but actually getting money to take you to the next level, because you forget that writers have to pay the bills, they've got to pay the gas, they've got to pay the insurance, they've got to pay everything. So many writers can't make a crust. And in a way, this is saying to writers, well, look, it's not that this is going to tide you over indefinitely, but we're behind you. And
yeah, and it's not my area of expertise. I'm used to someone who takes a monthly check, and that degree of uncertainty, which must have been 10 times worse for people over the last year. I respect to people for working their way through that. And again, I think companies like Zurich and many of our peer companies out there, I think we do have a bit of a duty and a responsibility to try and provide some sort of respite, something to look forward to, and anything that we can do in that, I think, I think that's, it feels, it's something that makes us feel, or me personally feel fantastic. It's something the organisation gets behind. We love the involvement in that. It takes us away from some of the day-to-day things that we have to deal with. So it's only fair if we're getting something out of it that we give something back.
No, it's great. Well, listen, thank you so much. I mean, it's been a brilliant awards. It's lifted the festival, and it's lifted lots and lots of writers who we know have been in the shortlist. And now we're going to go directly to the awards. We're going to go to studio, and I'm going to leave you in the capable hands of Andrea Catherwood.
Welcome everybody, the moment is finally here. It's the Dalkey Literary Awards 2021, presented by Zurich, and I'm delighted to say that in the studio I have the two chairs of the two judging panels. It's Derval MacDonald and Roisin Ingle. Thank you very much indeed, both of you, for being here.
I know, it's finally here.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course you've been immersed in these books. Absolutely.
This has been my life for the last little while.
Yeah.
And it's what a privilege and honour just to get stuck into all of these.
Roisin, how has it been for you? It's quite a responsibility, isn't it?
It's a huge responsibility. I have to say, personally, I found it great because I was having a little trouble reading in the pandemic and having any books stay in, so I was delighted to be asked to do this. But yeah, a real privilege and an honour, because each of the books on the shortlist were incredible reads. It was a difficult decision we had to make, but really fun making it, and something nice to do when we were all locked down. So.
And so you enjoyed the process?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I have to say, I chaired the panel last year, and I find it wonderful to be able to read and reread books and really think of them in a slightly different way, because of course, Derval, you have to give it your all.
Oh, I'm not doing it again. I'm not going to do it for quite some time, actually, because, and particularly when you're a chair as opposed to being on the judging panel itself, because it comes with an extra layer of responsibility. Especially, I was on my judging panel, I had AIDEEN and DECLAN, who took their jobs incredibly serious. But talk about an impassioned panel, and we didn't decide at the first sitting. We had to, like kids, we had to take time out, go away for a week, cool down, calm down, and come back again and go through another really intense process. So although it was a huge privilege and incredible fun to read it, we really took that duty as judges really seriously, and really took our time. So all of these authors really put us through our paces.
Now, this was the Emerging Writer Prize, and that has a lot of cachet for young writers, or whatever age you are, whenever you emerge and and actually create your first or second book. Very important. I wonder what you thought of the scale, the kind of range of prose that you were reading.
Yeah, well, first of all, you really have that sense of how much a difference this can make to an emerging writer. And of course, emerging writing can be of any age. Like, I mean, our youngest was 14 when they first wrote that book. And I suppose the challenge for us was that we were blessed with a strong, but also a very diverse short list of books, So when you have a memoir from a 14-year-old writing about nature, novels, everything was in that mix. And sometimes you were going, well, how can you actually actually compare this with that. But we applied a really rigorous, discussions, very, very intense. And at one stage, one of our judges cried. Was so moved and so impassioned by it and championing everything. And that's why we took that time out. And I'm really, really, really glad that we did.
Great stuff, Derval. Well, now we've got the chance to hear what you and your fellow judges thought of those books.
From the first paragraph of The Wild Laughter, Caoilinn Hughes is writing in a totally distinctive voice. It's a completely unique perspective on contemporary Ireland, and her dark and comic writing means that she has this unique talent for bringing dark humour into the most painful and difficult of circumstances. It's an exhilarating book from start to finish, and I would highly recommend it.
Dara McAnulty's Diary of a Young Naturalist stole my heart. You have to keep reminding yourself, he was 14 when he started to write this book, from spring equinox to spring equinox. What I loved about it, apart from the fact that he is an extraordinarily talented writer and naturalist, but he brought us into several worlds. He brought us into the world of nature. I'm from Northern Ireland. I wanted to go straight back home and visit all of these places he had described in such detail. But also, he is a young person who has autism, and he brought us so clearly into that world, and that was really, really striking as well. And I cannot wait if we get the opportunity to meet his family, because they sound absolutely lovely. And this book is a real tribute to them. Watch this kid where he goes in the next 10 years.
As you were, ELAINE Feeney is a poet of established reputation, and As You Were has the density and acuteness of vocabulary and word choice and a kind of lyric luminosity that you would expect from a poet. But it's also this big, unwieldy modernist monster of a book. It's such a powerhouse, corralled by the extraordinary narrative voice of this her heroine, Sinead Hines, who's we know from the start has been diagnosed with terminal cancer. And the narrative ranges back and forth from her traumatic upbringing to her kind of reckless, kind of promiscuous behavior, her marriage, her turbulent marriage. It's funny, it's sharp, it's witty, and it has that theatrical structure set on the ward. It has the starkness of a Beckett play, but it has the emotional power and tumultuous passion of a Eugene O'Neill tragedy. It's unlike anything I've read in a long time. It's immensely moving. This is the book that made me cry talking about it. I love it to death.
Oh, I think Exciting Times is the most stunning work of contemporary writing. I think Naoise Dolan is an exceptional writer. She's got such command of her form. She's witty, but it's dry. And although on the surface it's a coming of age story, it's about a young woman who's trying to live her best life. But at the same time, it's also, I think, a really seriously post-colonial novel. It charts the kind of shifts in global power, whether it's Hong Kong or London or Dublin, or the discussions of Brexit. It's a really contemporary novel that's grappling with changes in global power, but also reflecting that in the life of one young woman. I would highly recommend it. It's a really, really accomplished piece of work.
I was already a pre-existing fan of Patrick Frean. I actually make sure I have time to read his Irish Times columns and make sure I'm in a safe space, because I'm usually howling with laughter, just love them so much. What really threw me about this book was that we have all of Patrick Frean's usual humour, observations and wit, but we also have this extraordinary observation. His is quite an extraordinary life, and his ability to write about that life is fantastic. And to write about really, really deep subjects like depression, like the fact that him and his wife couldn't have children, these things, there are moments where you just go, whoa. So really, really beautiful book, actually, and it is brilliant. And there are parts of it which are painful. I know myself and the judges at the end were just kind of going, we want more. We want more. So I would really, really like to see more of this. So it threw me a little bit because I was just expecting a laugh out loud Patrick Free trademark stuff, which you do get, but you also get this other insight into a life and a skills of observation. So it was the duality of this book that really, really threw me.
This is lyric poetry, but with such power. What Hopkins, Gerard Manley Hopkins, who's a big influence on this on this book, I think, called inscape. They're poems that are alive in the moment. They're devotional, often spiritual, while being sensual, highly erotic. They're prayerful and incantatory, and so there's a great attention to the natural world, to barn owls and wild garlic and oak trees and forests, and also to the encounters, sexual encounters in the woods, where each woodland smells quietly of sex thereafter. And then he brings you on this journey, this grueling journey, with poems in memory of his father, who was very suddenly diagnosed with cancer while this volume was being written, and died. And that's a very dark, grueling journey, but it's powerful and illuminated, building to this Pentecostal promise of the title poem, Tongues of Fire. It's an extraordinarily accomplished first collection, and I think we'll be hearing about Sean Hewitt for years to come.
Whoa, well, I think that gives you at least a taste of the sheer range of literary talent on display, and indeed the passion of the judges. I mean, presumably you were able to see that some of the judges were sort of championing specific books. I suppose what it tells you is that all of these books are worth a read. Yeah, all of these books are worth a read, and people do have different tastes. They do have, you know, different insights into things, and we really, really learned from each other as a panel. But oh my goodness, are AIDEEN and DECLAN powerful advocates for books that they love. Okay, well, let's take a moment now to actually look again at the shortlist. Well, there's the emerging authors shortlist, and we're not going to keep you in suspense for much longer as to who the winner is. Now, of course, in an ordinary year, Derval, you know, right now, we would expect to be in a tent with a huge audience and, of course, all those emerging writers, and they'd be nervously waiting for their name to be called. We can't do that this year, but we're going to do something else quite clever.
We can't do that this year, but what we are going to do, we have to innovate because we're in this hybrid world and all online. So we're going to try and create a little bit of a conceit. We're going to call the winner and hopefully just dupe them into believing that what they're going to be doing is just telling us about their book as part of the publicity for the festival and just to interview all of the shortlisted entrants. But what we're not going to do, hopefully, is let them know that we're actually going to announce the winner. So we'll have to experiment and see how it goes.
Brilliant. So the author that we're about to call doesn't know that they have won.
Does not know, thinks that they're being called along for a short conversation to talk about their book.
OK, Derval, I am hoping that you've got a poker face. Off you go.
I'm going to try. So let's call up our winner.
Hi, Derval.
Hey, Elaine, can you hear and see me okay?
I can just hear you now. I just saw a big wave there at the start.
I'm going to get a T-shirt which says "I'm on mute," and that's what I'm going to get for after all of this being over. Listen, thank you for bearing with us. Look, we're just speaking to each of the shortlisted ones, and my name's Derval, and I had both the honour and, quite frankly, the stress of chairing this panel because it was absolutely brilliant that the books that we all had. I just want to check, because we are just kind of doing all of this online, just to check with you, maybe just for sound levels. Can you just, we'll open up by saying, what have you been reading and during lockdown?
What have I been reading during lockdown? I've actually just started Colm Tóibín's new book, The Magician. Loving it, yeah, about Thomas Mann. So I've read hundreds of books, but you know what? I don't know, like you, they're not going in. They're not staying in. I did read all the shortlist.
a pretty good thing, and it's a good thing we did that too. I'm actually fascinated by your bookshelf. I just kind of want to zoom in even closer and see what you have there. I've become obsessed with people's bookshelves. I think the guys are giving me the thumbs up to say that the sound is okay. This is how we described your book: a mighty, turbulent firestorm of a book with a pulsing, rhythmic narrative voice. I want to just ask you, where did the idea for your fabulous protagonist, Sinead Hines, come from, and that really fabulous view in the world that she had from that hospital room? I hope, God forbid, if I ever go into one, that I meet characters like the ones you portrayed.
Well, actually, you might, because it was very much inspired by a very long stint I did in hospital myself. So, yeah, so Sinead was just this culmination of just months and months of processing my own hospital experience. And originally I had kind of written 12 or 13 chapters in this first-person narrative voice, and she became quite clear to me. I had to kind of separate her from myself, you know.
So it's not quite biographical, but what was really ambitious about it, you know, the people she met, but also some of the big themes that you tackled in this book, Sinead. It was really, Sinead, look, I'm even calling you Sinead, Elaine. It was really quite ambitious.
Yeah, you see, it didn't really feel like that to me, because after being in hospital for so long, I realised that Irish people have this uncanny knack of telling all their secrets to strangers. So actually, you know, while people said, you know, you were dealing with all these themes of Irish life, they kind of come up naturally in conversations with people, I found anyway, you know. So I wrote it in that frenetic energy before repealing the 8th Amendment, and I feel that we were really sharing stories at that time. So I suppose it was ambitious, but it was never intended to be maybe as ambitious. I just felt I was telling stories.
And how moving a process was it? Because I don't know, I can reveal to you now that one of our judges cried during the judging process that we have. So moved were they by the stories, by the language, and just by that rhythm, the way we could just hear those stories. They literally just came so alive, Elaine.
Yeah, it broke my heart, particularly Jane, and Sinead actually broke my heart at times. And I remember my mum saying, but that's bizarre because she's your character and she's your creation. but it was in a kind of a Dickensian sense that they almost appeared as this chorus of people talking. It sounds completely daft, but that's how it happened. So I think in the writing of it, I was okay. It was when I was going back to edit it with my editor that I found it quite heartbreaking. You know, and she was very much making me face the characters, and at times I was like, no, I can't. But yeah.
Well, it was really, really extraordinary, and because it made one of our judges cry. It moved all of us incredibly, and I hope I don't make you cry when I say we're not here to talk to you about your book. We're here to tell you that you are the winner of the Dalkey Book Festival Emerging Writer 2021, and we are so thrilled for you. I wish we could give this award to you in person.
Sorry.
I'm going to cry too. I know.
Oh gosh, it's just wonderful to see you so moved. Everybody, I think, in the studio is.
Oh,
Congratulations,
wow.
Elaine. Congratulations.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you, Derval, and thank you to the judges. And to all the other fantastic shortlisted authors who I know really well. But if I go to list them now, I'll mess it up. Yeah. Oh God, this is an awful shock.
Take a moment. Take a moment there, Elaine. You should see the atmosphere here in studio. We're feeling emotional too. Can I ask you what it means? Because whatever about an overall winner of a big prize, an emerging writer prize is really, really important for those whose work is selected, long-listed, shortlisted. Wait till you see this and get this beautiful, beautiful award in your hand. Tell us, what does it mean for an author like you to have been recognised and to have won this prestigious award?
Oh, just to be shortlisted was like amazing. And I think for me, I've been publishing poems since, well, I've actually been writing poetry since I was a teenager. So, you know, it's amazing at this stage. What I want to say is you can be an emerging writer at any stage in your life. I had to take my eye off the ball, you know, life got in the way, kids, you know, yourself, the usual. But I always dreamed of being a writer. So thank you.
Woo, it's a bit emotional in here too. But here it is, it's so beautiful, and we can't wait to place it into your hands. Congratulations to you, your family, and everyone who made this possible, and thank you for bringing SINEAD into our lives.
Elaine, congratulations.
Sorry for not being more articulate. Thanks to everybody and to Dalkey. Thank you.
Well, after all that drama, it is far from over, because now it is time to move on to the novel of the year. Roisin, you were chair of the judges for this one, and it's a heck of a heavyweight shortlist, isn't it?
It's very weight. One of the books is called The Weight of Love, but it's the weight of books. Yeah. There's a lot of girth in here, and a lot of literary heavyweights, people like Anne Enright and Roddy Doyle, then some new writers like Hilary Fannin with a debut. So a real range of people at different stages of the careers, and just excellent reads that had us around the table kind of arguing a little bit, you know, disagreeing with each other, but ultimately the winner we chose we all pretty much agreed on. But it was a wonderful experience, I have to say.
And a real range of literary styles as well.
Definitely, totally different styles. And talking about being a chair and having the responsibility of it, it's difficult. But I must say I was with PASCHAL, DONOHUE and SINEAD GLEESON, both very experienced people in various meetings. SINEAD's obviously chaired a lot of these things, and PASCHAL's in a lot of meetings these days in the job that he's in. But he said that I was very good at moving around.
He's finance minister,
isn't
he?
Exactly, he is finance minister.
But he found time to read. That's a good thing, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's actually nice to see that there's someone in charge of the country has breadth of interest as well, and he's really passionate about books. So there were passionate conversations, and yeah, really enjoyable. We only needed one session for ours. We made our decision quite easily.
Okay, well, you say that there was a lot of passion here, so let's go now and hear what the judges actually thought of those books.
Actress by Anne Enright tells the fictional story of Irish actress Catherine O'Dell, a former star of silver screen, and it's told through the eyes of her daughter Nora, who is recalling the path to her mother's success and then its subsequent unravelling. But Nora is also really keen to figure out the complexities of her own relationship with her mother and where it went wrong. The novel is full of wonderful details, often looking at the grubbier side of fame behind the curtain and how narcotic that kind of the lights and the stardom can be for some who often pay a very high price for it. The book also delves into sexism that was so inherent in the golden age of Hollywood and was so interesting for all of us to read, especially in the era of Me Too. On a sentence level, this book is superb. I think there's never a spare sentence in any of Anne Enright's work, and we were all united in our love of its use of language, the vivacity of it, and also the humour. Anne Enright is a really funny writer, and it's a superb and very timely book in many ways.
So what I really enjoyed and admired about A Paragon is this is an amazingly inventive book. It is a very new form, but despite the new form, it didn't get in the way of the story. And I thought that was a remarkable achievement by Colin McCann, because when I read fiction that experiments with structure, I sometimes feel the structure gets in the way of the story. And it's a real compliment, I think, to the skill of this writer, that his experimentation with structure adds to the story as opposed to distracting from it. And there was a fluency about this book, despite its very hybrid form, that I thought was remarkable and really enjoyed. So this is a truly beautiful book. It is by Donal Ryan, a novelist and short story writer that I hugely admire. And this is the story of the disappearance which is temporary in nature, of a daughter. The return of that daughter to her family, what that means for the daughter and for her family. And it's about what happens when you lose somebody. It's about what happens if you get them back. And it's about what both experiences mean for the life of a family. So a truly beautiful book that I enjoyed so much.
Well, The Weight of Love. I really loved this book. As you might imagine, it's a novel about love. It's about intimacy and heartbreak and loss. But most of all, it's about that sliding doors feeling that can come at a certain age, looking back on life, recapturing or trying to recapture moments from the past. And it's about all those fantasies we have of our lives as they might have been had we just made different choices. Hilary Fannon's writing is exquisite. There are the gorgeous sentences, moving themes, and there's so much truth and wisdom in here about life and living and loving. And the thing about this book is it's so assured and sure-footed that it was actually really hard to believe it was Hilary Fannon's debut novel. And I just can't wait to see what she comes up with next. So brilliant.
Maggie O'Farrell's Hamlet is named for Shakespeare's son, who died in 1596, age 11. And 4 years later, his father, William Shakespeare, wrote his very famous play, Hamlet. Now, this doesn't sound like a book about Shakespeare, and it isn't a book about Shakespeare. In fact, you could call it Agnes, because it's very much the story of his wife. It's set in the 16th and 17th century, and the book really brings alive the era from poverty to the sound of the streets, to nature, to life on farms, to the reality of day-to-day living in that century. It's also a story about the cruelty and randomness of illness. It's about families, it's about love, it's about grief. And like Anne Enright's Actress, it also can be about the effects and the impositions that fame can bring with it. It's incredibly moving, it's beautifully written, and we all really liked it when we were judging this year.
Well, thank you for giving me this book to read in a pandemic, because it was gorgeous to read something so booze-soaked when we couldn't go on actual pub crawls. But in Love, Roddy Doyle takes us on an epic journey around the pubs of Dublin with these two guys, Joe and Davy. They're old friends, and they're looking back on their lives and trying to make sense of where they've ended up and who they are now to each other. It's a love letter to loads of things, actually. It's a love letter to friendship, to Dublin, to pubs, to the fine art of slagging and of drinking, of course, and a fascinating glimpse into the mind of the middle-aged Irish male. The dialogue jumps from the page because it's Roddy Doyle and that's what he does best. And it's hilarious too, of course, in a way that only Roddy Doyle can be hilarious. So as I said, I loved this book called Love.
Wow, listening to this makes me want to read every single one of those books. Roisin, I have read a few of them. One of them actually I listened to on audiobook, that was Anne Enright's, which is actually another really interesting way of hearing books these days, particularly when it's in the author's own voice.
Absolutely, and my mum is 81 and an avid reader, but she has macular degeneration, so she can't see as much, so she listens to everything, and I'm not quite there yet, but she assures me it's just as good as reading, because there's a lot of snobbery about listening to books rather than reading them, but it's just as good. Yeah, and I mean, all of these books, I think they're all on audio and you can listen to them or read them, and they were just wonderful. I mean, such different styles you mentioned earlier, like you think of Colin McCann with A Paragon, you know, illuminating a really complex issue such as the Middle East, and then the lyricism of Donal Ryan in Strange Flowers, and then, as I said, that lovely debut from Hilary Fannin, which is heartbreaking. It's full of nostalgia. It's got those sliding doors moments that makes you kind of question, you know, what the choices you made when you were younger and how your life can go. So yeah, just what all great novels do, take you somewhere else. And that's what I found. It got me back into reading in a much more engrossing way, and I felt like I was there in all of these books, and everyone around the table felt the same, even though we did have our favourites.
Fantastic. Well, before we find out who the winner is, let's just remind ourselves of the shortlist. And there you have them, the Dalkey Literary Awards shortlist for Novel of the Year. Roisin, just before we find out who the winner is, The prize itself, I know obviously that there's a cash prize, which is very, very important for all authors these days, but the actual award is incredibly beautiful. It's made from, I think, a number of different types of Irish storm-felled wood.
Storm-felled wood and layers through the book. So I think this will be something that authors particularly will love to have on their shelves. A lot of awards, and no harm to any other awards, but they're kind of garish, or maybe there's some kind of things people put in the bathroom. This is not something you're going to want to hide away. It's beautiful, and the fact that it's from storm-fallen Irish trees that are hundreds of years old, there's a gorgeous story in the award itself, so I think people are going to love it.
Fantastic. Now, you have now got to do what Derval did extremely well. Poker face, Derval, who I'm not sure I'll ever trust another word she says to me, frankly, just saying. But you've now got to do the same thing with the winner of the novel of the year.
Yes, I have to be very careful how I say this. We're going to talk to the winner, and no gender reveal at this stage, and we're just going to talk to them, but we're going to pretend that we're on a test call and they don't really know what's really happening. And then hopefully I pull it off as well as Derval, because she was brilliant.
Roisin, this is your Cilla Black moment. Surprise, surprise. Off you go. No pressure.
Hi.
Can you see me at this stage? Roisin here.
Hi, Roisin. I can't see you.
You don't need to see me. There I am. Hello. How are you doing?
How are you? Nice to see you.
I like your earrings. Listen, you're very good to take...
Especially for you.
Oh, well, that's brilliant. You're very good to take this, because we're just going through all the shortlisted authors and we're just doing some sound level checks as well. So I'm just asking, what have you been reading in lockdown? Have you found it difficult to read? Because I certainly did.
I didn't actually. What I found myself drawn to in lockdown was a lot of rereading a lot of series of novels. It's interesting. I don't know what it was about the kind of lockdown of being very long, but I was drawn into the kind of long form of things like I reread the Barrytown trilogy, and I read the Casalettes again for about the third time, and I read Jane Gardam's Old Filth trilogy, which I absolutely loved. I got completely lost in that. I actually read that 3 times during lockdown. But also I read a new thing. I really loved Sherry Jones's How the One-Armed Sister Sweeps Her House, which just completely transported me to Barbados. It's a really interesting book about the island and what it's like, and it draws these big cast of characters together over a murder, and it's very quietly experimental. I also loved Donal Ryan's new book, so I read a lot.
Yeah, another of the shortlisted authors we'll be talking to. Thank you very much. I think we're okay for sound levels. I'm just going to tell you, Maggie, what the judges said about your book. So you just brace yourself for some praise, if that's okay. Incredibly moving and beautifully written, this bewitching novel brings alive the era, the smell, sight and sound of the city streets and also the surrounding countryside. It's about family, love and grief. It's a totally immersive novel, intimate, intense and devastating. And I think we were all just very moved, obviously by Hamlet, but by Agnes particularly, just a wonderful character. Can you tell us a little bit about the inspiration for what is such a beautiful novel?
Oh, well, thank you so much, Roisin. I'm going to try and remember all that when I'm having a down day.
We cried, we did, we loved it. And I'm a mother of twins, I have to tell you, so it also spoke to me in yeah.
It was probably a difficult read then at times, I imagine.
Yeah, but also just gorgeous too in that intimate way that they have, the bond,
Oh, well, thank you so much. Thank you. I mean, the inspiration, it's funny, it's been a long time coming, this book. It's had quite a long gestational period. And I think I first heard about Hamlet Shakespeare when I was 16, and I was at school studying the play Hamlet for my Scottish Highers. So I was 16 going on 17, and I had a really wonderful English teacher, and he mentioned in passing that Shakespeare had a son called Hamlet who died aged 11, and Shakespeare had gone on about 4 years later to write the play Hamlet, and that essentially they were the same names because spelling was a lot less stable in Elizabethan times. And I just remember being completely struck by the almost echo of these names and just wondering, what does it mean? What does it mean for somebody as mysterious and as shadowy as Shakespeare to call a play your protagonist and the ghost, let's not forget, after your dead son? Why did he make that choice? So I just always wondered about that. And so I suppose the novel, and I've always felt that Hamlet isn't well known enough. He gets a brief mention in Ulysses, but I don't think enough people know about him. Enough people know that Shakespeare had a son with the same name as probably his best play, I think. Yeah. So I wanted to put him center stage. I wanted to say to people, this boy was important. He was significant. He mustn't be relegated to a literary footnote. Without him, we wouldn't have Hamlet, and we probably wouldn't have Twelfth Night.
Well, that is beautiful, and I think you've done that job so wonderfully, and so many people know about Hamlet now. I certainly hadn't heard about it before, but you transported us. Now, I have to say, Maggie, we've only just met, and I'm feeling a bit bad already because I've got you here under a bit of false pretenses. We aren't talking about the shortlisted novel, we're talking about the winner of the Dalkey Literary Awards Novel of the Year, and that's you, Maggie O'Farrell, and we're delighted. Tell us how you feel.
Oh, I'm so thrilled. Thank you so much. Such an honour and such an accolade. I mean, I'm doubly pleased because, of course, my father was born and raised in Dalkey, so it's a festival really, really close to my heart, and I would always come there when I was little to visit my grandparents. So I love Dalkey Book Festival. It is, I think, probably my favourite festival in the world. But also, it was such a fantastic shortlist. What a strong shortlist with so many brilliant books. So I felt that I was in this very, very cool gang, you know, being on the shortlist. So I'm absolutely thrilled. Thank you so much to the whole festival and to the judges and everybody watching. So I'm really made up. Thank you.
Oh, that's brilliant. I hope you can see this award. I was holding it upside down for a moment there, but it's the right way up. And I mean, it was an absolute pleasure to give you this. It was really unanimous across the board in our judges. We had such a wonderful time discussing your book. It took us to places we didn't know we cared about or were interested in. And I think that's an amazing mark of a novel. The award is beautiful. I think it's going to sit really nicely on your shelves, and thanks to everyone at the Dalkey Book Festival for this. Yeah, it's going to be winging its way to you, Maggie, and just maybe a final few words about what awards like this mean to authors like you, especially in these times.
Well, it's funny, you know, it's always wonderful to realise that somebody's had a response to something you've written. And, you know, it's actually almost as wonderful when it's just a child wanting to show you a book in a library, or, you know, somebody in a signing queue, or, you know, like this, which is an awards panel. So it's always just thrilling to know that people have responded to something that you've put out there. But I always think actually that awards are more for readers than for writers. You know, awards are fantastic because they show readers, you know, they open up to readers books that they might not otherwise have picked up in a bookshop and a library. So as a reader, I love awards because, you know, you can discover all kinds of books that you may not have come across yet.
Well, this one's for you, and we're so glad you're here. And I hope it gave you a little bit of a nice surprise.
Oh, that was such I was absolutely astonished. I really wasn't expecting that.
I felt a bit deceitful.
Thank you so much. I'm really thrilled.
Maggie, we're delighted for you. We'll be sending this to you, and it will make a gorgeous addition, as I said, to your bookshelves. And thanks for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
And well done. Congratulations.
Cheers.
Oh, how wonderful.
I know.
It was lovely to see Maggie so very happy. Yeah. And actually, that is the most amazing book. It's a book that I find totally transportive.
I couldn't recommend it more highly. And it's such a thrill to see her there and to see her genuine
and look
pleasure.
at her moist, glistening eyes when we're all
it's gorgeous to tell people nice things at a time when things have been so horrible.
Yeah, when you think of it, like the last year and a half that everybody has been through. Actually, when I was coming up to tell Elaine, I could feel my knees kind of start to shake because I was just going, my goodness, it's been so tough to be able, it was like being Santa or something, to be able to actually say to someone, even down a camera,
yeah.
And this is something, particularly for the emerging writers, something that can change their lives, and it's after all of this, it's just been such an uplifting thing to be involved in.
It was wonderful, and I think we really got a sense there talking to both those winners of just what it meant to them. It was really lovely. Well, thank you both very much as well. Congratulations for chairing. It's not an easy thing to do. You both did it wonderfully. It was fabulous to have you here today. And thank you very much indeed for watching. And I'd also like to thank Zurich, the sponsors of the Dalkey Literary Awards, because of course, without them, it wouldn't be possible. I hope we've given you some inspiration for your reading lists. So thank you very much for joining us, and happy reading.